Obviously, this is a big day for you and, frankly, for so many of us because of the jobs numbers. We added more than 1.67 million jobs, more than expected. At the same time, we have a long way to go. Is this half empty or half full, this glass?
Well, I think what it shows, David, and it's good to join you, is that we are continuing the really strong recovery we saw starting back in May. Another 1.8 million jobs here, as you said, exceeding expectations. And back in April or so, I was posed the question at times when we would get back to 10% unemployment, and I said I thought we could do it by the end of the year. And some people thought that is too optimistic a projection, but here we are. Unemployment's dropped nearly another point at 10.2%. So this is a very good report, very promising. A strong recovery continues, but we also are acutely aware, David, that we have a ways to go. That there are far too many Americans still out of work, and we're very focused on helping them return to the workplace, but also get some supplemental unemployment support until that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Secretary, I do want to say that a number of people didn't think we'd be back down to 10%. We're just over that now, 10.2%. At the same time, we have something approaching 13 million people by my count, if you go back to March, who've lost their jobs. At the rate of 1.7 a month, it's going to take a long time to get those people back to work.
Well, one of the reasons that today's report, David, I think is being regarded as very good news is that July was a challenging month in three of our largest states. California, Texas, Florida saw that spike in coronavirus cases, which thankfully is now turning around, and things are looking better. Although, as I've said so many times in your show, we have to continue to be careful and disciplined toward the virus. So to add, nearly 1.8 million jobs during a month when three of our largest states were encountering some headwinds shows that we are making progress even in challenging circumstances, and that we can do even better. And by the way, when I look at a little more deeply into the report, let me mention a couple things I noticed. One thing, we've talked before about healthcare jobs, how many jobs were lost in healthcare, which surprises some people, in the midst of a health crisis, that we were losing healthcare jobs. But we still have 800,000 fewer people employed in healthcare right now than in February. Those are jobs we can put back quickly, David. And then the other thing I noticed, and something I think you and I have talked about before, how many people say their unemployment is temporary? They expect to go back soon. We're still over 80%. So the people out of work remain mostly optimistic that they can get back to work soon. So we are definitely not declaring victory. There is work to be done. The president is very focused both on the policies that will stimulate the economy, and also, with or without Congress's help, getting additional unemployment support. But it's a good report. And by the way, just one last point. It comes on a good week. We saw unemployment filings drop significantly Thursday, and we also got good news this week about expansion both in manufacturing and the services sector. So it's really been a very encouraging week, but still a lot of work to be done.
Secretary Scalia, as you point out, many people were concerned as the coronavirus came back in some of the southern and western states that would affect these jobs numbers as well as other economic numbers. As you look at these labor numbers, do you see any effects of some of the partial shutdowns, for example, of bars in Texas and things like that? Did it have any effect on the employment that you could detect?
I'm sure it did have an effect, David, but not one that we can detect now. As you know, the state-by-state numbers don't come out for a couple more weeks, so we'll see some indication there. We did see unemployment filings going up just a little bit in Texas and Florida, California, during that period, not as much as people might have expected. We also saw hospitality, which includes restaurants and bars, actually add a lot of jobs in July. You might have thought it would be damped down by what was going on in those states. So we didn't see an impact there. We know there was an impact. It ended up not being as great on these overall numbers as folks had feared.
Yeah, now I wonder if part of that is because those jobs had been so far down, so they have farther come back up. It's an opportunity in a sense. On the other hand, manufacturing, for example, I think you added 26,000, which was much more modest. Does that give you cause for concern?
obviously, we always want to see more added in manufacturing, but manufacturing is one of the areas where we saw a lot of good news this last week in terms of the monthly report on expansion. Manufacturing, we know as a whole, is expanding much more quickly than had been projected. I think we were a few points above what the projections had been for expansion in manufacturing over last month. So I expect jobs to follow in that sector as well.
Mr. Secretary, one of the things in business I've learned is that you focus too often on what's broken and try to fix it instead of focusing on what's working and try to do more of it. As you look at this job creation last month, what drove it, and can we do more of what it is, whatever that it is?
Oh, I wish I knew, David. It's such a dynamic economy at this particular moment. A lot of what we're seeing is simply people being recalled back to places that had been closed in full or in part as a result of the virus. But we know that some sectors are growing rapidly. I mean, we've seen some of the online platforms bringing people on and hiring larger numbers. You talk to people in the grocery sector, same thing. They're picking up some of the workforce that was previously in restaurants. And on manufacturing, let me add one other thing we haven't seen the effect of much yet, but I think is going to be a growing force is the impact of the U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement, which the president signed and put through Congress earlier this year. It was a very well-received labor union support, business support. That is going to add, over time, hundreds of thousands of good-paying manufacturing jobs. I was actually in Ohio yesterday with the president at a manufacturing plant where he was talking about the USMCA impact. And just last, we've talked about this before too, but the president had seen so many jobs added to our economy in the first 3 years, 7 million jobs in the first 3 years of the administration, which we attribute to a light tax burden and reducing regulatory burdens where we can. Those are things that we know work. They worked before. And so as we look for things that work and we should be looking to do more of, certainly those are items on the president's list, tax relief and reducing regulatory burdens further.